teaching. I will read 1984 by George Orwell. I wanted to read it for a long time, and I got it last year, like a year and a half ago in Greece. And I was looking for a guest house that get cash, not only card. So it was right, it fit to the reality. So before I will read it, I will encourage you to use cash as much as possible for our freedom, for the children's freedom, and to do whatever you can to maintain freedom in this world. And I'll start read it to you. So I hope you will. And before that also, remember to subscribe with a day, Ravit Levi Meditation Dance, also on Facebook, and also Instagram and TikTok, Ravit. So let's start. I hope you will hear it. Okay, so chapter 1. Just write me if you hear me. Okay. The hallways smelled of old cabbage and old fragments. At one end of it is the colored poster, too large for indoor display, had been tacked to the wall. Depicted simply an enormous face, more than a meter wide, the face of a man of about 45 with a heavy black mustache and relatively handsome features. Can you hear me? Winston made for the stairs. It was no use trying to leave. Even at the best of times, it was seldom working, and at present the electric current was cut off during daylight hours. It are so contrived that the eyes follow you about when your big brother is watching you. The caption beneath it, okay. Inside the flat, a fruity voice was reading out a list of figures which had something to do with the production of pig iron. The voice came from an oblong metal plate like a jeweled mirror, which formed part of the surface of the right-hand wall. Winston turned a switch and the voice sang somewhat, but the words were still distinguishable. The instruments, the telescreen it was called, could be dimmed, but there was no way of shutting it off completely. He moved over to the window. A smallish, frail figure, the membranous of his body barely emphasized by the blue overalls, which were the uniform of the party. His hair was very fair, his face naturally sanguine, his skin rugged by coarse soap and blunt razor blades because of the winter that had just ended. I'm sorry for my reading. It's also quite dark here and the letters are quite small and my English is not so perfect, but I'm trying and very important, so keep on. Outside, even though the shut window pane, the world moved forward. Down in the street, little alleys of wind were wilding dusts and turned paper into spirals. And though the sun was shining and the sky had a harsh blue, there seemed to be no color in anything except the posters that were plastered everywhere. The black mouse that showed its face gazed down from every momentary corner. There was one on the house front immediately opposite. Big brother is watching you, the caption said, while the dark eyes looked deep into Winston's own. Down the street level, another poster turned at one corner, flapped fitfully in the wind, alternately covering and uncovering a single word in sock. In the far distance, a helicopter skimmed down between the roofs, hovered for an instant like a blue bottle, and darted away again with a curving flight. It was the police patrol snooping into people's windows. The patrols did not matter, however. Only the thought police mattered. Behind Winston's back, the voice from the telescreen was still babbling about big iron and the old human. metal plate commanded. It could be seen as well as heard. What? It's 1984. I wrote it in the headline. The video by George Orwell. Yes, I live for freedom. I live for maintaining the freedom for children. This is my mission in life. So, let's continue. I cannot see much. My God. Where is the light? No light. Okay, we continue. So, there was, of course, no way of knowing whether you were being watched or at any given moment. How often or on what system the thought police plug in on any individual wire was guesswork. It was even, It was even conceivable that they watched everybody all the time. But at any rate, they could plug in your wire whenever they wanted to. You had to live deeply from habit that became instinct in the assumption that every sound you made was overheard. And except in darkness, every movement scrutinized. Winston kept his back turned to the telescreen. It was safer, though, as he well knew, even a man could be revealing. A kilometer away, the Ministry of Truth displays before, toward vast and wide above the dreamy landscape. This, we thought, with a sort of back distance states. This was London, chief city of airstrip one. Itself the paramount and populous occupants of the provinces of Self-hypnosis. It tried to squeeze out some childhood memory that should tell him whether London had always been quite like this, where there are always these vistas of rotting 19th century houses. They're silent, shored up with and the heat of gravity. And the places where the bombs had cleared a larger patch and there have sprung up solid colonies of wooden whirling like chicken houses. But it was no use. If you do not remember, nothing remained of his childhood except a series of bright lit tables, urinal gates, no background, and mostly unintelligible. The ministry of truth, meaning truth, in youth was startlingly different from any other object in sight. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I got it in Greece the last time. It's too short. It was like 5 months ago. Yeah, I didn't got it for 5 months. But I don't know, the new hairline that I bought after mine was stolen, not like the other one that I had. Let's continue. Because it's not about how it looks, it's about how it feels, right? And we need to feel the freedom, we need to feel the strength inside of us to maintain the freedom from children. So let's keep on living. Wow, I need a flashlight. Okay. But I will do but tell me, can you hear me? Can you hear me speaking with the sound of the stream? Okay. And so the ministry of truth means true in the newspeak was startlingly different from the other object inside. It was an enormous pyramidal structure of glittering white concrete, soaring up terrace after terrace, 300 meters into the air. Where Winston stood, it was just possible to pick out on smart face and elegant lettering the three slogans of the party. War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. And the ministry of truth contained, it was said, 3,000 rooms above ground level and corresponding ramifications below. Scattered about London, there were just 3 other buildings of similar appearance and size. So completely did they warp the surrounding architecture that from the of Victory mansions, you could see all of them simultaneously. There were the homes of the 4 ministries, and between which the entire apparatus of government was divided. The Ministry of Truth, which concerned itself with youth, entertainment, education, and the fine arts. The Ministry of Peace, which concerned itself with war. The Ministry of Law, which maintained law and order. And the Ministry of Plenty, which was responsible for economic affairs. Their names in newspeak, mini true, mini black, mini facts, mini law, and mini plenty. And the Ministry of Law was the really frightening one. There were no windows in it at all. Winston had never been inside the Ministry of Law, nor within half a kilometer of me, do you hear what I say? Or just now without this noise? What do you think? He crossed the room into the tiny kitchen. And by leaving the ministry at this time, at this time of day, he had sacrificed his lunch in the canteen, and he was aware that there was no food in the kitchen except a hunk of dark-colored bread, which had got to be saved for tomorrow's breakfast. He took down from the shelf a bottle of colorless liquid with a plain white label marked Victory Gin. It gave off a sickly oil smell as of Chinese rice spirits. Winston poured out nearly a teacupful, nerved himself for a shock, and gulped down like a dose of medicine. Intensely, his face turned scarlet, and the water ran out of his eyes. The staff was like nitric acid, and moreover, swallowing it one had the sensation of being hit on the back of the head with the rubber cloud. The next moment, however, the burning in his belly died down, and the world began to look more chill. He took a cigarette from a crumpled packet, marked Victory cigarettes, and unconsciously held it upright, whereupon the tobacco fell out on the floor. With the next, he was more successful. He went back to the living room and sat down at a small table that stood to the left of the telescreen. From the table drawer, and he took out a bottle of ink, and a thick, round-sized blanket with a red pen and a marble cover. For some reason, the telescreen in the living room was in an unusual position. Instead of being placed as was normal in the end wall, where it would command the hallway, it was in the longer wall on the side of the window. To one side of it there was a shallow alcove in which Winston was now sitting, and which, when flats were built, probably been intended to hold bookshelves. By sitting in the alcove and keeping well back, Winston was able to colors, such as shoelaces and razor blades, which it was impossible to get hold of in any other way. Yet even quick glass up and down streets, and then it slipped inside and got a book for $2.50. At the time, he was not conscious of wanting it for any particular purpose. He had carried it guiltily home in his briefcase. Even with nothing written in it, it was a promising possession. Okay, let's change the leg. I like to do few things together. Very much. Thank you. Because there is a lot of things to do. If you also want to enjoy much of your time, you need to learn how to combine things. Okay, the thing that he was about to do was to open a diary. This was not illegal. Nothing was illegal since there were no longer any laws. But if detected, it was reasonably certain that it would be punished by death, or at least by 25 years in forced labor. Winston fitted and leaped into the pen holder and sucked it to get the grease off. The pen was an archaic instrument, seldom used even for signatures, and he had procured one furtively and with some difficulty, simply because of the feeling that the beautiful pretty paper deserves to be written on with a real nib instead of being scratched with an ink pencil. Actually, he was not used to writing by hand, apart from very short notes. It was usual to dictate everything into the speak right, which was of course impossible for his present purpose. He dipped the pen into the ink and then faltered for just a second, and tremor had gone through his bone. To mark the paper was the CC and in small clumsy letters he wrote, April 4th, 1984. How are the legs now? Thank you for your concern. And it's quite sad, when you have nerve pain. So just sleep with it. Just feel the numbness all the time. It's not something you can but just live with it. So the pain is over. Oh, thank you. Now I can see. quite hard, but what can I do? I do whatever I can to just stay happy and calm and spread the freedom to the world. So I can leave from here now. I can do like this. Let's continue. Okay. Okay. And oh well, where was I? Okay. So April 4th, 1984. And he sent back a sense of complete helplessness and descended upon him. To begin with, he did not know with any certainty that this was 1984. It must be round about the date, since he was very sure that his age was 39, and he believed that he had been born in 1944 or 1945. But it was never possible nowadays to pin down the end date within a year or two. For whom it suddenly occurred to him to wonder, was he writing his diary? For the future, for the unborn, for the future, for the unborn, but also for the born. And like it's my words now, we must do whatever we can to protect the children's basic human rights, even if it's not our children. Now, how old I am? You have a clue in this video. But, okay. But thank you, everything keeps you young and happy. So I really recommend on it. I don't understand. Okay. For the unborn, for the future, for the unborn. His mind hovered for a moment around the doubtful date of the page. And then fetched out with a thumb against the newspaper double. For the first time, the magnitude of what he had undertaken came home to him. How could you communicate with the future? It was of its nature impossible. Either the future would resemble the present, in which case it would not listen to you, or it would be different from it and its predicament, discipline would be meaningless. For some time, he sat gazing stupidly at the paper. The telescreen has changed over to the strident military music. It was curious that he seemed not merely to have lost the power of expressing himself, but even to have forgotten what it was that he had originally intended to say. For weeks past, he had been making ready for this moment, and it had never crossed his mind that anything would be needed except courage. Courage. Do you remember what is the most important thing in life? Courage. And what brings courage more than anything? MD. MD is meditation dance. You are welcome to do it. Join the MD revolution. So I will repeat this sentence again. And where was it? For weeks past, he had been making ready for this moment, and it had never crossed his mind that anything would be needed except God. The actual writing would be easy. All he had to do was to transfer to Baker the bitter, meaningful, restless monologue that had been running inside his head literally for years. At this moment, however, even the monologue had dried up. Forever is very close loser had gone itching and unbearable. He dared not scratch it because if he did so, it always became a flame. The seconds were ticking by. He was conscious of nothing except the blackness of the page in front of him, the itching of the skin above his ankle, blaring of the music, and the slight looseness caused by the change. Suddenly, he began writing in sheer panic, and only imperfectly aware of what he was setting down. His small but childish handwriting struggled up and down the page, shedding first its capital letters and finally even its full stops. April 4th, 1984. Last night took flips, all for films. One very good one of a ship full of refugees being bombed somewhere in the Mediterranean. Audience much soothed by shots of the great hulks, fat men trying to swim away with a helicopter after him. First we saw him swallowing along in the water like porpoise. Then you saw him through the helicopter's gun sights. Then he was full of hope and the sea round him. And the sea turned pink and sank as suddenly as though the holes had leapt in the water. An audience shouting with laughter when he sang. Then you saw a lifeboat full of children with the helicopter hovering over it. There was a middle-aged woman might have been a Judas sitting out in the boat with a little boy about 3 years old in her arms. The little boy screaming with fright and hiding his hand between her breasts, as if he was trying to borrow rights into her, and the woman putting her arms around him and comforting him, although she was blue with fright herself, all the time covering him up as much as possible, as if she thought her arms would keep the bullets off him. Then the helicopter Then there was the wonderful shot of the child's arms going up, right up into the air, a helicopter with a camera in its nose must have followed it up, and there was a lot of applause for the party seats, but the woman down in a broad part house suddenly started kicking up a fuss and shouting, and they didn't alter of show, and it's not in front of kids. They didn't ain't right, not in front of kids, and until the police turned her out. I don't suppose anything happened to her. Nobody cares what the trolls say. Typical trolls reaction, they never. Okay. This. Okay. Yeah, better concentration, but can you hear me? Mamas, but I don't know. Can you hear me from there? I think so, but I will try. And Winston stopped writing, partly because he was suffering from cramp. He did not know what was made him pour out his name of rubbish. But the curious thing was that while he was doing so, suddenly his memory was clarifying itself in his mind, to the point where he almost felt equal to writing it down. It was, he now realized, because of his other incidents that he had suddenly decided to come home and begin the diary again. It had happened that morning at the ministry, anything, and so nevertheless could be said to happen. And it was nearly 1100 and in the Nepal's apartments where Winston worked. They were dragging the chairs off and chairs out of the cubicles and putting them in the center of the hall outside the big desk in preparation for the 2 minute dance. And Winston was just taking his place in one of the middle rows when two people who he knew by sight. But he had never spoken to came unexpectedly into the room. One of them was a girl whom he often passed in the corridors. He did not know her name, but he knew that she worked in the fiction department. Presumably, since he had sometimes seen her with oily hands and carrying a scanner, she had some mechanical job, no one of the normal writing sheets. She was a bold-looking girl of about 27, with thick hair, a freckled face, and swift, athletic movements, a narrow scarlet sash, an emblem of the junior anti-sex league, anti-sex league of was worn several times round the waist of her overalls, just tightly enough to bring out the shapeliness of her hips. Winston had disliked her from the very first moment of seeing her. He knew the reason. It was because of the atmosphere of hockey fields and fun baths and community hikes, and general clean-mindedness which she managed to carry about with her. He disliked nearly all women, and especially the young and pretty ones. It was always the women, and above all the young ones, who were the most devoted adherents of the party. And the swallowers of slogans, and the amateur spies and nosers out of orthodoxy. But this particular girl gave him the impression of being more dangerous than most. Once, when they passed in the corridor, she gave him a quick sidelong glance, which seemed to pierce right into him, and for a moment it filled him with black terror. The idea had even crossed his mind that she might be an agent of the thought police. That it was true was very unlikely. Still, he continued to feel a peculiar uneasiness, which had fear mixed up in it, as well as hostility, whenever she was anywhere near him. The other person was a man named Brian, a member of the inner party and holder of some post so important and remote that Miss Winston had only a dim idea of its nature. A momentary hush passed over the group of people around chairs as they saw the black overalls of an inner party member approach. Brian was a large, burly man with a thick neck and purse, humorous brutal face. In spite of his formidable appearance, he had a certain charm of manner. He had a trick of resembling his spectacles on his nose, which was curiously and serving in some indefinable way. Curiously civilized. It was a gesture which, if anyone had still thought in such terms, might have recalled an 18th century nobleman offering his snuff box. Winston has seen Brian perhaps a dozen times in almost as many years. He felt deeply drawn to him, and not solely because he was intrigued by the contrast between Brian's urban manner and his Price Brothers business. Much more, it was because of a secretly held belief, or perhaps not even a belief, merely a hope that held belief, and merely a hope that Brian political orthodoxy was not perfect. Something in his face The games had started. Much more in the first chapter. Okay. And tell me if you can with me. So, can you hear me? When I was there, did you hear what I say? What I said? What you are writing? Yes, I don't know. What is this? No, I don't have only fan. I have only MD. Yes, MD is meditation dance. Better here? Stay here? Okay. I will. I'm a big fan of the MD, only MD, and you're welcome to join. No, not MDMA. MA I have in psychology. I'm a psychologist. This is pure MD. You don't need no alcohol, no drugs to get to the highest euphoria you cannot even imagine possible. What is that? It's meditation dance. You can watch on my videos on YouTube, Ravit Levi Meditation Dance, also on Facebook. I'm a psychologist and I developed a method of personal development and self-healing through the meditation dance. And it's the best vaccine and medicine for body, mind, and soul. And you're welcome to get addicted like me to the right addiction. And just watch my videos. And you're welcome also to my workshops, online workshops, or frontal workshops. You will be place that I travel at the moment and spreading the empty. Now I'm in Budapest, so if you are here, you are welcome to write me and we can meet and make a workshop. Okay. I cannot understand. But don't forget the bell so we don't miss the next one. Okay, let's continue. Goldstein was delivering his unusual venomous attack on the doctrines of the party, an attack that was so exaggerated and was reserved that the child should have been able to see through it. And yet, just plausible enough to feel one with an alarm feeling that other people less level-headed than oneself might be taken in by it. He was using Big Brother. He was denouncing the dictatorship of the party. He was demanding the immediate conclusion of peace with Eurasia. He was advocating freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of expressionless and enthusiastic faces who swam up to the surface of the screen and vanished, till they were replaced by others exactly similar. The dual rhythmic tramp of the soldiers would form the background of Goldstein's bleating voice. Before the hate had proceeded for 30 seconds, an uncontrollable exclamation of rage were breaking out from half the people in the room. The self-satisfied sheep-like face on the screen and the terrifying power of the Eurasian army behind it were too much to form. Besides the sight of, or even thought of Goldstein produced fear and anger automatically. He was an object of hatred more constant than either Eurasia or Hysteria. Since when Oceania was at war with one of his powers, it was generally at peace with the other. But what was strange was that although Goldstein was hated and despised by everybody, although every day and 1,000 times a day, on platforms, on a telescreen, in newspapers, and books, his theories were refuted, smashed, ridiculed, held up to the general gaze for the pitiful rubbish that they were in spite of it all, of all this. His influence never seemed to grow less. Always there were fresh youths waiting to be seduced by him, and they never passed when spies and saboteurs acting under his directions were not unmasked by the thought police. He was the commander of the best shadowy army, an underground network of conspirators dedicated to the overthrow of the state. The Brotherhood, its name was supposed to be. There were also whispered stories of a terrible book, a compendium of all the heresies, of which Goldstein was the author and which circulated clandestinely here and there. It was a book without a title. People referred to it, if at all, simply as the book. But one knew of such things only through the blog. Neither the Brotherhood nor the book was a subject that any ordinary party member would mention if there was a way of avoiding it. In its second minutes, the hate rose to a frenzy. People were leaping up and down in their places and shouting at the tops of their voices in an effort to drown the maddening and bleating voice that came from the street. The so small. pink, and her mouth was opening and shouting and shutting like that of a landed fish. Even O'Brien's happy face was flushed. He was sitting very straight in his chair, his powerful chest swelling and quivering as he thought he were standing up to the assault of the wave. The dark-haired girl behind Winston had begun crying out, "Swine, swine, swine," and suddenly she picked up a heavy newspaper dictionary and flung it at the screen. It struck Goldstein's nose and bounced off. And the voice continued inexorably. In a lucid moment, Winston found that he was shouting with the others and kicking his heel violently against the round of his chair. The horrible thing about the two apes was not that one was obliged to act part, but that it was impossible to avoid joining in. Within 30 seconds, any dance was always unnecessary. A hideous ecstasy of fear and vindictiveness, a desire to kill, torture, to smash faces in with slender seemed to flow through the whole group of people like an electric current, turning one, even against one's will, into a grimacing, screaming lunatic. And yet, the range that one felt was an abstract, undirected emotion which could be switched from one object to another like flame of a glowlamp. Thus, at one moment, Winston's hatred was not turned against Goldstein at all, but, on the contrary, against Big Brother, the party, and the thought police. And at such moments, his heart went out to the lonely, derided, parading on the screen, sole guardian of truth and sanity in a world of lies. And yet, the very next instant, he was at war with the people about him, and all that was said of course seemed to him to be true. At those moments, in secret loving of Big Brother changed into adoration, and Big Brother seemed to tower up, and an invisible, fearless protector, standing like a rock against the hordes of Asia and Goldstein, in spite of his isolation, his helplessness, and the doubt that hung about his very existence, seemed like some sinister enchanter, capable by the mere power of his voice of wrecking the structure of civilization. It was even possible at moments to switch one's hatred this way or that by the voluntarily act suddenly by mind. He would flog her to death with the rubber truncheon. He would tie her naked and stake and shoot her full of arrows, and like Saint Sebastian, he would ravage her and cut her throat at the moment of climax. Better than before, moreover, he realized why it was that he hated her. He realized why it was that he hated her. He hated her because she was young and pretty and sexless, because he wanted to go to bed with her and would never do so, because around her sweet, supple waist, which seemed to ask you to encircle it with your arm, there was only the odious scarlet sash, aggressive symbol of chastity. The hate rose to its climax. The voice of Goldstein had become an actual sheep beat, and for an instant the face changed into that of a sheep. And then the sheep face melted into the figure of a European soldier who seemed to be advancing, huge and terrible, his submachine gun roaring and seeming to spring out of the surface of the screen, so that some of the people in the front row actually flinched backwards in their seats. But in the same moment, drawing a deep sigh of relief from everybody, the hostile figure melted into the face of Big Brother, black-haired, black-mouthed control, full of power and mysterious bone, and so vast that it almost filled up the screen. Nobody heard what Big Brother was saying. It was merely a few words of encouragement, the sort of words that are uttered in the din of battle, not distinguishable individually, but restoring confidence by the fact of being spoken. Then the face of Big Brother faded away again, and instead the three slogans of the party stood out in bold capitals. War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. But the face of Big Brother seemed to persist for several seconds on the screen, as thoughts the impact that he had made on everyone's eyeballs was too vivid to wear off immediately. The little sandy-haired woman had flung herself forward over the back of the chair in front of her. With a tremulous murmur, and that sounded like, "My survivor!" She extended her arms towards the screen, then she buried her face in her hands. It was apparent that she was uttering a prayer. At this moment, the entire group of people broke into a deep, slow, rhythmical chant of beep, 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 beep. Oh, is that a coincidence, guys? Over and over again. Very slowly, with a long somehow curiously savage, in the background of which one seemed to hear the stamp of naked feet and the rubbing of tom-toms, or perhaps as much as 30 seconds they kept it up. It was a refrain that was often heard in moments of overwhelming emotion. Partly it was a sort of high and wisdom and majesty of Big Brother, but still more it was an act of self-hypnosis, a deliberate drowning of consciousness by means of rhythmic noise. Winston seemed to grow more, and in the 2 minutes hate he could not help sharing in the general delirium. But this subhuman chanting of BB, BB always filled him with horror. Of course, he chanted with the rest. It was impossible to do otherwise. To dissemble your feelings, to control your face, to do what everyone else was doing, was an instinctive reaction. But there was a space of a couple of seconds during which the expression of his eyes might conceivably have betrayed him. And it was exactly at this moment that the significant thing happened, if indeed it did happen. Momentarily, he caught Brian's eye. Brian had stood up. He had taken off his spectacles and was in the act of resetting them on his nose with his characteristic gesture. But there was a fraction of a second when their eyes met, and for as long as it took to happen with Winston, yes, he knew that O'Brien was thinking the same thing as himself. An unmistakable message at best. It was as though their 2 minds had opened and the thoughts were flowing from one into the other, though with their eyes. I am with you, O'Brien seemed to be saying to me. I know precisely what you are feeling. I know all about your contempt, your hatred, your disgust, but don't worry, I am on your side. And then the flash of intelligence was gone, and O'Brien's face was as indestructible as everybody else's. That was all, and he was already uncertain whether it had happened. Such incidents never had any sequel. All that they did was to keep alive in him the belief or hope that others besides himself were the enemies of the party. Perhaps the rumors of vast underground conspiracies were were true after all. Perhaps the brotherhood really existed. It was impossible, but in spite of the endless arrests and confessions and executions, to be sure that the brotherhood was not simply a myth. Some days it delivered meetings, some days not. There was no evidence, only fleeting glimpses that might mean anything or nothing. Snatched off overhead conversation, faint scribbles on laboratory walls. Once, even when two strangers met, a small movement of the hand, which looked as though it might be a signal of recognition. It was all guesswork. Yes, very likely he had imagined everything. He had gone back to the cubicle without looking at Brian again. The idea of following up their momentary contract hardly crossed his mind. It would have been inconceivably dangerous even if he had known how to set about doing it. For a second, 2 seconds, they had exchanged their equivocal gallants. Winston composed himself and sat up straighter. He let out a belch. The gin was rising from his stomach. His eyes refocused on the page. He discovered that while he sat helplessly and using So, for now, okay, I will finish the chapter. Okay, let's finish the chapter. Okay, that was all, and he was already answering slide fall towards over the smooth paper, breaking large neat capitals. Down with big brother, down with big brother, down with big brother, down with big brother, down with big brother. Over and over again, feeling a half pain. He could not help feeling a twinkle of panic. It was absurd, since the writing of those particular words was not more dangerous than the initial act of opening the diary, but for a moment he was tempted to tear out the spoiled pages and abandon the enterprise altogether. He did not do so, however, because he knew that it was useless. Whether he wrote down with Big Brother, or whether he refrained from writing it, made no difference. Whether he went on with the diary or whether he did not go on with it, made no difference. The thought police would get him just the same. He had committed, would still have committed. And even if he had never set pen to paper, the essential crime that contained all others in itself. Thought crime, they call it. Thought crime was not the thing that could be concealed forever. You might dodge successfully for a while, even for years, but sooner or later they were bound to get you. It was always a night, the arrest invariably happened at night. A sudden jerk out of sleep, the rough hand shaking your shoulder, the lights glaring in your eyes, the ring of hard faces round the bed. In the vast majority of cases, there was no trial, no report of the arrest. People simply disappeared. Always during the night, your name was removed from the registers. Every record of everything you had ever done was wiped out. Your one-time existence was denied and then forgotten. You were abolished, unhumiliated. Vaporized was the usual word. For a moment, he was seized by a kind of hysteria. He began writing in a hurried, untidy scroll. They will shoot me, I don't care, they will shoot me in the back of the neck, I don't care, down with Big Brother, they always shoot you in the back of the neck, I don't care, down with Big Brother. He sat back in his chair, slightly ashamed of himself, and lay down the pen. The next moment he started violently. There was a knocking at the door. Already he sat as still as a mouse, in the futile hope that whoever it was might go away after a single attempt. But no, the knocking was repeated. The worst thing of all would be to delay. His heart was thumping like a drum, but his face, from long habit, was probably expressionless. He got up and moved heavily towards the door. Chapter 1 finished. Tell me, what did it mean? Would you like this idea of reading to you 1984 of George Orwell? Would you like to hear more of this book? Hello everyone. Yes. And tell me if you want. I will continue to read it for you. meanwhile, don't forget to subscribe with the bell, Ravit Levi Meditation Dance, on YouTube, also on Facebook, the same name, and the Instagram and TikTok, ravit.md. So stay free and dance. Do your MD meditation dance. Ciao.